We are back on the Rational Boomer podcast. Hopefully, your day is going well. It is Thursday, and as so often the case, well, every week anyway, we have our regular guest, fan favorite, Old Soul. Old Soul, thanks for coming back.
Hey, not a problem. I like it.
Well, good. We enjoy it too, and I know the people that I keep getting emails from, and you no doubt are hearing from in the comments and stuff. It's a resounding yes for Old Soul. So that's that's not surprising in the least. Now, as folks know, Old Soul works a lot with women who are dealing with some reproductive medical needs that they can't get in their home state, so they will come and stay with Old Soul. She's very generous with letting strangers stay in her house so they can get the proper health care that they need in Nevada, where she's at. Now, Old Soul, you had a couple of things, a couple of clients. You're going to update us about one client that I think everybody's going to want to hear about. And then your most recent client, you can tell us what's going on there too.
Yeah, so the 15-year-old, I found out that she's in the hospital because she tried to unalive herself and was
Oh,
not successful in that.
wow.
Um, so she's struggling with that. Um, she did use when you go to the hospital, they take away like your cell phone and all that stuff. But she's still able to make calls. She just has to do it when one of the nurses is there. But she used one of her phone calls to call me, which was really, really nice to talk
Wow.
to her.
Yeah.
And I'm just hoping that she can get through what she's going through. And then I had someone else who stayed here, um, who it's not a good outcome if she continues with her pregnancy. So she was here, but her husband ended up talking to their pastor. The pastor and some other people called her. They prayed on the phone and talked to her, and she went back home.
Well,
And that's pretty difficult for me to
yeah.
do that because everybody kept telling me, "Just, like, talk to her, she'll listen to you," and I did talk to her, but it's talking and then there's, like, pushing my views and my opinions onto her, which is something I wouldn't do,
Right.
and people failed to see the whole reason that she was here was because she needed a choice to what she wanted to do with her body, and if I would've pushed her, then that is kind of like influencing her and taking away from her choice that she has, and I don't agree with it. I think about her, her family, I think about the 2 children that she already has, and I think about her going back home and what's gonna happen to her physically when she gets there. And I took her back today. Yesterday, she just said, "I've never been to Vegas before. We should go do something." So we went to the casino, we, like, hung out, did stuff that I don't do here, but she had a good time, and then she got on a plane and she went back home today, and to me, it felt like she was giving up. Like, "This is
Mm.
what they want me to do just to make my life easier. I'm just gonna go along with it." One of the things that she said was like, she'll just make sure she gets her affairs in order and whatever happens, happens.
Let's go over these two cases. Let's go back to the one with the 15-year-old that is at home now, and she tried to, you can say suicide here. This isn't like TikTok or YouTube in the normal sense, but she attempted suicide. Now, when she came to Vegas, she followed through with the abortion, correct?
Yeah, she did.
So now she goes back home and she's got to deal with probably some ridicule and some pressure and some shaming from her community, her family, and people around her. Is that what's causing the depression here to consider suicide, or is it rethinking having the abortion? What do you think the issue is there?
It was the years of trauma from being assaulted by this other person. When one of, like, the conversations that I had with her was, it's not her not wanting to be alive, it's her not wanting to live and deal with her experience. She
Right.
was just saying, certain smells trigger her because I guess he smoked certain cigarettes, and when she smells that, it kind of like triggers her.
Right.
She says sometimes, like when she goes to bed at night and like she lays down, she was saying it's almost like she can feel the weight of him on her when she lays down.
Wow.
Um, and so she doesn't want to feel that or relive that constantly. So it's not like she doesn't care about her family or her friends or school or anything like that. It's just the trauma of what happened to her for as long as it did that she has to continually live with.
Well, and the thing I want to remind folks that are listening, Old Soul is talking about the years of abuse this girl had, and she's only fucking 15. I mean, she's a child
Mhm.
at this point, and she was even younger when this whole thing started. I know there was some concern about telling her father. Did she end up telling her father?
Yeah, and that didn't help. They actually told him in a therapy session. I guess that was a safe space to tell him. And he wasn't angry with her. He was angry at the situation. And then a lot of him feeling guilty and feeling like he didn't provide a home for her to where she felt comfortable telling them. But I don't think he understands that it doesn't matter whether we all react to trauma differently.
Oh
And I
yeah.
don't think that she knew how to handle what was happening to her. And I think she just froze. And I think she was so afraid to say something that she didn't. And I don't think he's blaming her intentionally, but I think he's having a hard time wrapping his mind around why she didn't say anything. What took her so long to say something. And he's grappling with that. And on top of that, dealing with her depression and the aftermath of her assaults.
Is there any
Um,
intention or any possibility that they would pursue this criminal that abused her for so many years?
he wants to, the mom and the daughter don't, because they are just so afraid of what'll happen if the whole story comes out. So just going to the police and saying this is what he did to her without mentioning the fact that she got pregnant, she crossed state lines, she got an abortion. The state looks at the mother as a criminal at this point if she says what she helped her, she came here with her. So that's something that they don't want to risk, but that's something that the dad is willing to risk, if that makes sense.
Well, I understand his point of view, and based on this circumstances, with everything you've explained to me, it's almost as if the state government is an accessory after the fact in this girl's
Mhm.
abuse. They have put her in a position where she can't go to anybody without suffering some consequences herself. And this is the essence of the problem we have in this country. We have these people making these rash decisions on how reproductive medical care should be handled. And they don't think about the people in the middle that are suffering and even dying from this sort of stuff. This is just, I don't like abortion, so we're canceling it. And anybody who does it is going to jail. There's no thought process about it. There was
Yeah,
no planning or strategies as a way to implement what they're doing, which makes sense because it's fucking crazy in the first place. But you can't help but feel sorry for a girl like this, 15 years old and contemplating suicide. That is an absolute tragedy and absolute waste. And hopefully they can keep her and get her in a better place because that would be terrible if she was successful in something like that.
yeah, the dad doesn't think that the in their state, he doesn't think that they would follow through with charging the mother. Um, but there are the state that they're in is the state with the highest um, prosecutions for this.
Wow.
So I think he's one of those people that think that that's not gonna happen to them, and unfortunately, like, the mother and the daughter have a more realistic outlet, like, yeah, it can happen, and it will if you just look at they don't have a problem going after people who
Right.
seek abortions, so
Right.
it's against the law there. They're
I,
gonna
I
do it.
I think discretion is the better part of valor. You don't take a risk like that with your own lives, especially when you've done absolutely nothing wrong and have to be subjected to maybe going to jail or going through a lot of shit, or at the very least, a lot of ridiculous publicity about something very personal. This 15-year-old girl's having
Yeah,
enough trouble dealing with it without that kind of attention. Now, the second one that you talked about is a young woman, I'm guessing. She's not a child that
mhm,
came to you.
no,
She came to you because she needed an abortion for whatever reason. She has 2 kids. She came to you and you were helping her along as you do. But what it sounds like you were saying is she was getting calls from people at home, and all along they were trying to talk her out of this and manipulate her into going back home. And ultimately, she did. So she did not have the abortion. She did not go through with it. And now she's back in the very same situation that she came to you with. And that's what you find concerning, right? Because she was dealing with some shit when she came to you.
yeah, her health is at risk. Um, the pregnancy is non-viable, so she's not gonna give birth, to, like, a healthy baby or anything. It's just not gonna happen. But they tend to think in certain religious sects that it's God's will, whatever happens, happens, and that's what she's gonna that's what she's gonna do.
You know what, old soul, you're a very strong woman. We talk about a lot of things, but I know these stories really make you emotional. For the life of me, I don't understand why you put yourself through it. I don't get it. You're a better person than I. You're a better person than a lot of us because that's a lot of work and that's a lot of effort and that's a lot of um, pain put on your shoulders, and you don't need to take that.
Mhm. No, I don't need to, but it's like just leaving them to themselves, you know? Um, I just saw that Tennessee is doing the same thing that Texas is doing. They have bills on the floor right now, the travel bans, and that's going on in other states. And I don't
Right.
know how to just leave those women in the states and those girls in the states just by themselves with no help because they can't depend on a red state. So it's up to us in blue states to help them where we can and not just leave them by themselves. These last two, they have taken a toll on me. It's been pretty rough, and I'm trying to figure out a way to handle it without getting, like, depressed and upset all the time, but it is definitely taking a toll. Especially the last one, I just felt like she gave up, and I didn't want her to give up. I wanted her to fight for her children, but it's her choice, and I have to let her make that choice as hard as it is. Um, it's very, very hard to deal with that.
Well, all you can do is what you
I don't
do.
wanna be upset, but I am.
No, I
Ugh.
know, I know, I know, and we'll move on to something else here in a minute. But
Oh god.
just remember, old soul, all you can only do what you can do, and you're doing far more than most people would. To take the whole world or the whole story on your shoulders, it doesn't do any good because you don't have the authority to make these decisions. And even though you know what's right and you'd like to, I mean, even if you sat down and tried to uh, persuade them to go opposite of what their family's telling them, um, that would be no different than what their families are doing. You offer kind of a safe spot for them to come if they want to do what they need to do. If they decide differently, there's really nothing you can do about it, and it's not on you to feel responsible for it.
Yeah, I think, The kids these days, they call it, standing on business.
Standing on
That's I don't
business.
know how standing on business. But when I was growing up, they would say, "If you don't stand for something, you would fall for anything."
True.
And I've always said that women, we have a choice. It's our choice. It's not up to anybody else's. And even when I feel that that choice is wrong in this situation, I have to let her make that choice. And
Yeah.
I haven't been in a situation to where someone has left, and I know that it's a dangerous situation for them to leave, and then just worry about the next phone call that I get from her or, whoever. I don't think that I'm a particular fan favorite in her family or anything like that, but I don't know what her outcome is going to be. I have
But
no idea. But
well,
I know it's not good for her in a physical way. And it's not good for her two children that she already has. It's not
yeah.
like she didn't want to be pregnant. This is just something that happened to her. And I don't think it's fair to say it's God's will when if you believe in God, you believe that God created doctors and science and medicine and technology to protect us from certain things. That's why we've progressed and we've advanced. And I don't understand how people say they can believe in God, but they don't believe in the tools and the help and the grace that He's given us.
Yeah.
It's the complete opposite of that. So to say it's God's will and just sit there and watch someone suffer, possibly die, I don't get that. And I think the hardest part for me is seeing someone just give up. And and she just said, "I'm gonna get my affairs in order. I'm in Vegas. Let's just forget about all this stuff for one night and then gonna go back home." To me, it just kind of felt like she just kind of came to terms with her fate and she just wanted to, have some kind of peace or fun um before that happened to her, which is so sad to just think about that. It was hard to like sit at the slot machine and gamble with her. It was so hard to do that, but
Yeah.
it's not
Well,
for me to make a decision for her or anyone else.
and for those people who are relatively new to the podcast who don't know the whole story with Old Soul, you need to know with her doing all these things and putting this effort out, she comes from kind of a similar spot. She had a child when she was very young, and she was abused and had a lot of problems that she had to get out of. And to her credit, she not only got out of it, she succeeded and is on her own and making her own money. She's got a great job. She's doing great things for people. Her daughter grew up and she's 24 years old and she's smart as a whip. And things for Old Soul are going very well. But she understands what it could have gone. I mean, when you were when you had your daughter and you had all these things going on around you, could you imagine yourself in the position you are in today? Did you see there was any hope for you to get out from under it, get a good job, be healthy enough financially and emotionally to be able to help other people? Did that even come into your mind?
No. First, it was when you go through certain things in abusive relationships, you have to build your self-esteem up from like the ground up. You have to work up towards that. And I don't know anyone who left the first time like he hit me, I'm out. There's a cycle, you go back, you leave, you go back, you leave, you go back until you get your like it's a little bit harder going back each time. So at first it's hard to leave and then it's like harder and harder to go back.
Hmm?
But there's always hope that you could leave even if you believe that person's going to change. You know that you can leave and there's an out there. For these women going back, it's no hope because it's not like I could just escape. This is your body. This is something that can kill you. So
Right.
there is no leaving and going back and leaving and going back. It is fatal when you put them in situations that they cannot get out of or when people who just don't understand
Yeah.
put pressure on them to endanger themselves and they don't support them the way that they need to be supported.
Well, um, I think it's important you talk about the things you talk about because people need to understand more than what we hear in the TV news about the abortion issue. And you bring it home to a point where people can really see how it affects young women and families and what have you. So I appreciate you doing that. I know you get very emotional about it. So we're going to go on from there and talk about fun stuff, stuff that makes you laugh, like overthrowing the country or stealing documents or Supreme Court decisions. So we can move on from the emotional stuff. Um, the first thing I have to bring up, if I'm going to be honest, because you and I talked about this some time back, and I gave you a hard time. We both had an opinion on how this was going to turn out, and I kiddingly said, "Well, if I'm right, I'm going to come after," and joking you. Well, I was talking about the Supreme Court, and actually, we may have been talking about the 14th. I don't know. Were we talking about the 14th Amendment? Nonetheless, the Supreme Court,
We talk
um,
about everything.
we talk about everything. But the Supreme Court came out today regarding Donald Trump's claim of absolute immunity. I was certain they would come back and say, well, we got the 14th Amendment, we got all this stuff. We're just not going to hear this one. The appellate court made a good decision. We're not going to hear it. But that's not what happened. They came out and said, we will hear it, and we're going to do it on an expedited basis. Um, on April 22nd, we'll hear arguments. Now, there is no way the Supreme Court is going to give him absolute immunity. But what's troubling to me is how they've made a concerted effort to waste time as if they're complicit with Donald Trump's interest in delaying and delaying. It took them 2 weeks to come up with that answer. And now they're going to put it out 7 weeks before they hear the arguments. What was your immediate thought when you
Yeah.
heard that they came back and said, yeah, we're going to hear it?
It's just more oxygen that he doesn't need. I think that when the courts take these appeals and hearings and all this other crap that they're doing, it gives legitimacy to his claim, even though it's ridiculous, because it
Yeah,
feels like if it was ridiculous, the Supreme Court wouldn't even hear it. They would just throw it out, right?
you would
But the fact
presume.
that they're willing to, yeah, the fact that they're willing to take it up and hear it, not for us, but for the people that he's performing for, it gives legitimacy. And it also gives hope to them that, okay, he put this many people on the Supreme Court. They're gonna rule in his favor. It keeps giving them hope and hope and hope. And then when they don't rule in his favor, it makes them angry. I think there's a lot of like letdown and sadness there, and they don't know what to do with that. So they get angry and they lash out. And I think a lot of that we could avoid by just not giving his claims any kind of oxygen. And it
Right.
seems like that's what the courts continue to do with him. So it's pretty
Well,
disappointing, but it's not.
Well, let me throw this out. I've been listening to different people talk about this and different opinions, and the whole delay aspect is what concerns me. The end result has
Mhm.
to be that he doesn't have immunity. That would be crazy because if they give him immunity, thereby they give Joe Biden immunity because he is the sitting president, which means he can do virtually anything he wants. Throw Donald Trump in jail if he wants. But the question is, why did they decide to hear it? It seems like a pretty easy call. Somebody suggested that Donald Trump recently was in Florida, I think it was. He brought up the immunity claim again down there, in spite of all that's gone in the appellate court. Some people are suggesting the Supreme Court saw that this was coming up in different different jurisdictions, and they felt like we need to just put a cork in this and end this fucking thing. Because if we don't hear it here, then it's going to come back from Florida, it's going to come back from Georgia, whatever it comes from. And they maybe just want to put an end to it, a final decision on it. So, whatever he claims down in Florida or Georgia, if they don't give him the immunity in the Supreme Court, that just takes it off the table. and that's conceivable to a certain extent. It doesn't suggest they couldn't have done it in 2 weeks as opposed to 7 weeks, but that may be why they're trying to do this.
I don't really feel that way
Okay.
because they could have not taken the case up each time that he brought it in front of them. You don't have
True.
to have a hearing
True.
to say, "I'm just gonna squash all of it." You can
True.
just squash all of it by not hearing any of the bull crap.
Right.
I almost let that slip. Without hearing any of the bull crap, I think that the Supreme Court, I don't think they're gonna rule in his favor, but I do think that they will help him, and the way to help him is by delaying it.
Well, and then somebody suggested there's something Judge Chutkin can do too. I mean, prior to all of this, prior to all these appeals and all this bullshit, Judge Chutkin pretty much laid out for the prosecution and the defense team that we're going to give you 88 days, okay, to prepare your case. And that's roughly 3 months. Um, and the presumption is that while it's on hold now, that 88 days will not start until the stay is off. So if the stay doesn't come off until April 25th, then it's 88 days from there. And that puts us like into July or August to start it, July to start it. And they're suggesting that it would put it at mid-October for the end of the trial, which cuts it very close with the November election. And that's if everything goes smoothly and perfectly, which Donald Trump is involved, so it won't. But somebody suggested this too, and it sounds like something Judge Chutkin would do. She might say, well, I said 88 days before you started fucking around doing all this stuff. Now I'm making it 45 days. And if you don't like it too fucking bad, she could do that because she isn't locked into that because a lot changed since she made that judgment of 88 days. So if she's irritated by this and understands the time sensitivity of it, she could say, no, we're going to cut it back. It's not going to be 80 days. It's going to be 50 days. And too bad. This is all you're doing.
I don't know if she would do that because if she was to do something like that, it kind of feels like a backup plan or um it kind of would alleviate some of the pressure that's being put on the courts to you need to, stay on top of these deadlines, do this, that, and the third. And I think that in her own way, she wants to keep pressure up on the courts. And I think this is her way of doing it. She could do that, but I don't think she would want to risk, or I wouldn't want to risk easing up that pressure that's there.
Okay. Now, a lot of people, it's like everything that comes out in the news there, Donald Trump may gain an advantage or win a little bit. Everybody throws up their hand and go, oh, that's it. He's going to get off. This is going to happen. That's going to happen. He's going to push it out beyond the election. And I tell people, I'm Mr. Brightside. So you got to slow down, back up, and take a look at the facts here. Now, if court cases are delayed, that's only important if Donald Trump wins the election. With everything we're seeing,
Mhm.
I don't see any path to him winning the election. There's nothing that's positive for him as far as gaining support. So if he doesn't win the election, all these delays are for naught. It'll actually hurt Donald Trump because any protections he may have by being a candidate will be gone after November 5th. He'll just be a dumb fuck waiting to go to jail. The other thing is that between now and March 25th, we got a lot of shit going down. Um,
Yeah.
there was another announcement from the courts yesterday. Donald Trump, we know, owes about $550 million to New York State in the Letitia James lawsuit. Saying, oh, I got all kinds of money. I'm a billionaire. I got 400 or 500 million in cash and all that stuff. But you know what? Could we delay this a little bit? Could I get a little extra time, a little wiggle room, if you will, to get you that money? And the court came back and said, yeah, now we're not going to do that. There is no extra time for you. And then Donald Trump slyly goes, well, I do have 100 million. I can throw that in the pot. And basically the judge said, well, that's well and good, but you need 550 million, and you need it all within 30 days from the time in order to make an appeal. And that's why he wanted the delay. And he wanted that $100 million to get a pause of some sort. And through that whole thing, they said, no pause. The clock is running. Now, there was one concession that the judge gave. They said, here's what we'll do. Your sons, we'll let them remain as officers in their respective jobs so they can start filling out loan applications. Now, when Donald came with his 100 million and asking for time, he basically said, I ain't got the money. I ain't got the money. And no doubt he's already been talking about loans, and that obviously hasn't gone very well. I mean, let's be honest, he's not good for it. And who has $500 million they're going to loan Donald Trump? So Donald Trump is kind of squirming now. That's going to come to pass on March 24th. They will start liquidating his shit. He will be broke as a bitch. And that all starts March 24th. That culminates in March 24th. On March 25th, people seem to forget there is a criminal trial starting. And Donald Trump is being charged with 34 felonies. 34 felonies from Alvin Bragg. That case is going to take 4 to 6 weeks. Now, if Donald Trump gets convicted of 1 or 2 or 10 or all of them, he's broke and he's done. So whatever's going to happen in Washington, D.C. or Florida or Georgia, I mean, how many times can you swat a fly? He's going to be crushed before he even gets to those fucking things. So that's why I tell people, don't worry about it. What's kind of nice is you're going to have, they're going to take his money up to the 24th, the 25th. They'll start the case to take away his freedom. And then in April, they'll go with the immunity thing, and then Florida and all this stuff. This could go on well past the election, but I don't think it matters with these other two things coming well in advance of the election. What do you think?
Yeah, and then there's something else that people aren't paying attention to that's working its way through the system, and that's the Capitol Police's
Oh yeah,
lawsuit that they have against him that's working its way through as well.
right.
So I think that the Alvin Bragg one, I think that's going to be first. I've been like lately realigning my thinking to think that I don't know what's going on in these closed door meetings with Jack Smith and Eileen Cannon, but it does look like whatever is going on, she hasn't completely pressed down on the gas, but she is allowing that car to move. And I do think that's possible that that could happen before the DC case as well.
Well, it's scheduled to
I
start
just
in
think that
May.
he's being, yeah, and I think he's being exposed in kind of like a surgical procedure type of way.
Yeah,
I don't think that it was planned to happen this way. But I do think between those two cases, what's going to come out is going to sway a lot of people and expose him in a way that, of course, his die-hard supporters are not going to, they're going to ignore it. But there are people out there who are not going to ignore it. And it will sway their opinion of him, those who still have a decent opinion of him.
yeah.
Um,
Well, we know a conviction
I think
is
it's
going to
I think
hurt
it's
him.
a slow burn. It's a very slow burn with him, and I just say just kind of like savor that moment while it lasts. Is what I'm
Well,
trying to do.
and like I say, with regards to Alvin Bragg and the Manhattan District, there's 34 criminal charges, felony charges against him. He doesn't need all
Mhm.
34 to be convicted of, but Alvin Bragg does have a 98% conviction rate. So it's easy to presume he's going to get 5 or 6 of them, with terms in prison of anywhere from a year to 5 years. Now, I don't care if Donald Trump's in prison for a year or 10 years. He's not going to survive 1 year in jail. He's just not going to survive. And even if he only spends 1 year in jail, when he comes out, he'll be fucking worthless. He'll be broke. He'll be broken emotionally. And I mean, he'll be 78, 79, 80 years old by the time he gets out. So what I'm saying is people can worry about Florida and Georgia and DC, but these two next things that are imminent and are absolute, the taking of his money and property and going on trial in March 25th, that's enough to put the average man away for good. And Donald Trump is less than
Mhm.
average. He can be taken out by just this here. And everything else will just be kind of a fun thing to watch because he'll already be a dead horse.
Yeah, I think that the Alvin Bragg is not like a hush money case. There's so much more to it than that.
Oh
I
yeah.
think that what's happening with Trump that's the biggest detriment to him is exposing him. And I
Right.
think the court cases is that's the best part about the court cases is of course him being held accountable, but in addition to that, him being exposed, him saying that he doesn't have the money to put up for his bond. It's exposing to him that he is not a billionaire many times over. He's not a billionaire one time over.
Right.
Because if he was a billionaire, you give away a half a billion, you still got a half a billion left. So what? You're not hurting. You can still grift from your supporters and you could build your wealth back up from that. It's just that he doesn't have it. And it's exposing him for not having it. As much as we knew that, and as much as we didn't need that proof, there are people out there that needed that proof. And I think the exposing him is what's going to hurt him most in the end. And I'm hoping that people can turn this into, I don't know why people are not talking about this part of him owing so much money and being in this debt. They're not talking about the security risk he is
Oh
as the
yeah.
president of the United States. You see how susceptible he was when he supposedly had money and he had that facade? Now, when you strip away that facade and you know he doesn't have that money and you put him in that office, like how more vulnerable is he to influence peddling from all of these other countries? He's already thinking he's buddy buddy with Putin and other dictators. What makes you think that he is not going to take those opportunities to sell us out at every single turn when his butt is that far in debt? And I don't know why he's even allowed to run for president when he has that much debt hanging over his head. That is so dangerous. That's why Clarence Thomas is in a situation that he's in, is because he didn't have money. And so he was susceptible to taking bribes and taking money and making these crazy rulings on behalf of billionaires. So when you put Trump in that position, you see what damage can be caused through a Supreme Court that's bought. Just imagine a president that's bought. It's so dangerous, and nobody is talking about how risky it is for somebody to be that far in debt to be the president of the United States.
Well,
It's
that's true.
irritating. Nobody talks about that.
It's true, and it reminds you of when Brett Kavanaugh was coming in to be appointed to the Supreme Court. There was a story that he had debt on a mortgage and some other things to the tune of three, four, $500,000, and somehow mysteriously that all
Mhm.
got paid off by some rich benefactor who wants a conservative in the Supreme Court. They paid off all his bills. So now that guy, even though his debt is gone, he's now susceptible and responsible and obligated to whoever paid it off. So he's still vulnerable in that situation. The other thing about Donald Trump that I think people, you know, people think if he's not in jail, he's not being punished. People forget that he is a narcissist. He has some psychological issues. He is mentally diminished and mentally ill. There's just no two ways about it. He is. And you can do a lot of things to a guy like that. You can threaten him with jail. Um, you can punish him in any number of ways. But like you said, if you can point out and prove that all his claims are true, that he's not the smartest, he's not the strongest, he's not the richest, he's not the most powerful. When you take those away from him, there's really nothing left to that person. It's just a shell. And that is the greatest fear somebody like that has. And that's where Donald
Mhm.
Trump is now. He stepped up and he basically said, I don't have the money, even though he's been telling us he's had the
Yeah.
money. He doesn't have, when they tell him he doesn't have immunity, that's gone. They're tearing him down emotionally, and we're kind of seeing it in his face and his speech. But that one thing is the one thing that I think is going to keep him out of the election in November. Emotionally, he just won't be able to stand up to it.
I still think that he's gonna be he's gonna be the nominee. I really do because it doesn't seem like half of the Republican Party has an appetite for anything other than Donald Trump. The other half is open, and then there's a certain sector within that other half that's open who are never Trump, never Trumpers, who
Right.
say that they will vote for Biden. I saw an old woman on television who was talking about she read Project 2025 and it scares her. And these are, I know people say a lot about boomers, but boomers do come from a time where they know what it's like to have limited freedom in this country. They know
Right.
what it's like to be at war with one another. And I think that when those types of things are exposed to those people, they don't want to go back down that path again. And I think that a lot of people are thinking like, oh, all of the boomers are going to vote for Trump. But I do think that his rhetoric is so dangerous and it's so blatant that it is turning off a lot of them. I do think it's turning into more of like a Nazi party than anything else, especially when you see CPAC and all the Nazis who are just like openly walking around. I was seeing Nazis making posts and videos saying that they wholeheartedly expected to get kicked out of CPAC and they were surprised that they didn't. And they just really didn't know what to do with themselves when they were there. So I do think that is the base of the party. I do think the old school Republicans are getting kicked out. I think the rational boomers are getting kicked out. Um, I just don't think there's a place for them there. And I
Right.
think that the more pressure that's put on him, the more he's going to amp it up, the more extreme he's going to get, the more people that's going to be like, all right, well, everything else was like I could deal with, but this is a little too far. And I think that's going to continue to push more and more people out of that party. So the only thing that is left is that hardcore racist base.
We're going to take a break here in a minute, but there's something I wanted to bring up because you're better at analyzing this than I am. I analyzed it, but I'm an old fucking white guy. You talked about Donald Trump ramping things up and talking more crazy. You no doubt heard the quotes he had at a recent rally. Well, before I get to his
Mm.
quote, there's the guy that was on Fox or OAN, and he says, wow, Donald Trump is brilliant in coming out with these tennis shoes. He's going to get all the black vote because you know how black people love tennis shoes. Now, let me ask you, you're a young black woman. Do you like tennis shoes enough to vote for Donald Trump? What was your thought when he said that fucking thing? I'm glad you have a good sense of humor
Um,
about it because it's fucking a horrible thing, horribly racist thing.
I think I've had about as much racism that will last me my lifetime, just with Donald Trump alone.
Yeah,
That is, I would say that it's offensive, but it's not surprising.
right.
There's a certain group within my community, and it's just like that with any community. There is a small group who is very exploited, and somehow that's the face of the Black community. And then they're talking about these ugly sneakers, and it's kind of like, have you seen Black people who are into tennis shoes? They don't wear stuff that looks like that.
No, hell
We
no.
have standards, we have swag, and that's the complete opposite of that. And then I think they just think we're stupid. The only people that are buying those sneakers is, personally, I don't even think his base bought the sneakers. I think that there was only 1,000
Right.
pair. And to not get caught up in refunds and all this other stuff, I do think these are maybe like staffers or donators, those type of people
Yeah.
who bought those sneakers. I don't think this was anybody, the regular supporters of Trump that he fleeces on a daily basis. Those people did not buy those shoes.
Right.
I do think that these are all people he knows that bought those tennis shoes. For
Wait,
the simple fact, I don't know any Black person that you're going to sit here and say, you need to give me $400 up front. I'm going to give you your shoes when I give them to you. And however you get those shoes, they're not going to look like this. We're going to send you what we want to send you. So when you get what you get, you need to be happy with that and then shut up about it.
you know what's interesting about that deal?
We're not doing
This is an interesting thing that happened here. He's charging $400 for his shoes. He may only made 1,000 available, so that's $400,000. Just yesterday, he had to pay the New York Times $400,000 for lying about them during that whole tax thing. So he was just trying to
it.
get money to cover that fucking lawsuit. And so he doesn't even get to pocket that shit. He had to come up with some grift to pay off another lost case. But he did end up
He
paying
didn't
the New
grift
York
us.
Times. What's that?
He didn't grift us up. He didn't grift us. Those were his donors, I really do
Right,
believe,
right,
who brought those tennis shoes. I didn't see any like MAGA like posting you know how normally you buy something and you can post your confirmation or whatever?
right.
Nobody posted their confirmation saying, I bought these shoes. Hey, I was the first one to get it. Countdown to my MAGA shoes coming. None of that. Because we didn't, like the regular people didn't buy that. Those
Yeah,
were donors, those were staffers. It was just this big show of whatever.
right.
And people bought into that, you know. The guy on Fox News, I don't really know what to say,
Well,
other than the fact that he's racist.
I've constantly said that Donald Trump is racist, and I think that's pretty clear. But in his rally, he said a couple of things that I was appalled by. But again, I'm an old white guy. When he was looking out in the crowd and he said, "Man, those lights are really, really bright. I can't see many of the people. I can see all the black people. See how far I've come? See how far I've come?" And then he talks about how the black folks he can relate to the black folks because he's being persecuted. He's aligning himself, going through the same struggles that Navalny went through and that black people went through. And, they really love the mugshot t-shirts. They pay 19. Now, when somebody of color, a young black woman hears that, to me, I'm outraged because it's clearly racist. But the world doesn't need another white savior telling other people what's horrible. As a young black woman, how do you respond to hearing that?
I'm gonna quote Maddie on this one. What in the caucasity
Yeah,
for
yeah,
Trump to compare his self or his current predicament to the struggles of the Black community
yeah.
is just disrespectful. It's
It
very
is.
disrespectful. His father was a KKK. He was actually arrested at a KKK rally.
Yeah,
He refused to rent to Black people. This was like before I was born. The way that sometimes they would show us units, sometimes they wouldn't. When they would show us units, they would put the C on the application. C stood for colored. So
yeah.
they would know not to rent units to these people.
Wow.
After they were sued and they paid their fines and they started renting to us, they only put us in a certain segment of the buildings so we wouldn't be mingling with the other white people that were special. Um, he was president and he said that people coming from Haiti had AIDS. He said people coming from brown countries are coming from S-hole countries.
Right.
And then he gets on stage and say, I'm going through what I'm going through for the Black people, it's offensive. It's outrageous, it's ludicrous. And he said that in a room full of white people.
Of course.
And Donald Trump is very slow and he's stupid, and even he knows not to say that in a room full of Black people,
Yeah.
and he didn't.
No.
The narrative is because it was a conservative Black conference. The narrative is that there was all these Black people in there cheering and da 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 da. No, it wasn't. He was saying that in a room full of white people, and they cheered it on, and they clapped, and they laughed, and they applauded, which is no different than what happens at his rallies.
Right. Right.
It to me is mind-boggling that people are making such a big deal out of, oh, he said this at the Black conference. He says this at his rallies all the time
This
about
isn't
how
new.
popular he is with Black people. These racist comments, it's nothing new.
Right.
We cannot get outraged every time racism slaps us in the face, every time they say something, do something. It's disturbing that the people in the audience are so with it. It's not Trump because Trump is being Trump. It's the people supporting him, cheering and clapping and all this stuff that
Right.
is the most disturbing part about it. It's kind of isolating because you don't know who to trust when you
Right.
see that, because it feels like, oh, there's so many of them out there,
Right.
even though it's just to make it seem like there's so many out there. But for me, it was just kind of like, oh, well, it's the
Just
same thing that he always does. It was nothing new.
more of the same. Yeah, absolutely. Well, old soul, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. We're back on the Rational Boomer podcast. On the show today is Old Soul. Love having Old Soul here. She sometimes makes me feel dumb because I've always said that, the best part of having guests on the show is I try to get guests on that are smarter than me. And I haven't had any trouble doing that. And Old Soul is one of the people that I have a lot of respect for her knowledge and her her detail. She's very detailed about stuff, and I'm just the opposite. I'm not detailed. I mean, I get facts and figures and stuff like that, but you always bring up stuff. I'm going, oh no, shit, really. So I appreciate that. One thing happened yesterday that we thought would never happen, and we heard from Mitch McConnell, the turtle. He said that in November, he is resigning from Republican leadership and he will not run for reelection. Now, you have to understand his term goes till the 27. I don't know that he'll stick around even that long because he's 82 years old. And I had somebody say to me, I said this joke about Mitch McConnell. He says, Mitch McConnell's not going to make it to 2027. That dude already froze up twice like a 15-year-old laptop. And I go, I like that. I like that. What was your immediate
Um,
what was your immediate
I
thought when
think
Mitch quit or said he's going to quit?
don't let the doorknob hit you and the good Lord split you.
Yep, I
But
like that.
I don't think I don't think that's where he's going. I do think that he will try to hang on until November. And the reason I believe that he will do so is because, you know, you can say whatever you want about Moscow Mitch, but I think that he cares about that Senate seat more than he does anything. Clearly, he cares about it more than he does with his wife, because Trump was allowed to call her Coco Chow and get away with it. And for people who don't know what Coco Chow means, he's calling her a Chinese crackhead.
Is he really?
So
I did not know that.
yeah, that's what Coco Chow means. So the Coco is the cocaine, and then the Chow is the racist slur that he uses for Chinese. So
Oh,
when he was like on television saying Coco Chow this, Coco Chow that, he's
wow.
calling her a Chinese crackhead. Which is, like, I don't think if you're not used to like a certain level of racism, a lot of the stuff that Trump does and says, you wouldn't pick up on it. But yeah, he was calling her a Chinese crackhead, just like, with Letitia James, where he was calling her Peekaboo James. So a lot of his um, racist slurs is pretty overt. You don't try to hide it. But he was able to say that about Mitch McConnell's wife, and Mitch McConnell still protected him.
Well,
But anyway, so go ahead.
you've opened my eyes to so many slurs. I feel like we've got to bestow a title on you in terms of the Rational Boomer podcast and make you Secretary of Slurs. You're going to have to update us on the current slurs because I didn't know any of this shit.
Yeah, I'm not gonna put "I speak Trump" on my resume.
Good, good. That's probably wise. I interrupted you. Go ahead.
I think that he'll try to hang on until after the election, and the reason I feel like that is because Mitch knows that the Republican Party is being taken over by MAGA. He knows that, and he knows that as soon as he leaves, they're gonna put a MAGA in charge. He knows that. And to stop the Senate from turning into the House before the election, I think right now that's his focus and that's his goal. And so I think that is what he's going to try to that's why I think he's going to try to hang on until November. I think he's going to try. I don't think that physically it may be completely in his hands, but
Right.
I do think he's going to try to hang on until after the election.
Well, let me ask you this. He's 82 years old. His health is obviously fragile at best based on the behaviors we've seen and the symptoms we've seen. Do you think of this? I mean, there's nothing that Mitch McConnell loves more than power. He's had his fair share of power. And while he's been a toady for Donald Trump, and even though he is essentially Satan, he's not a dumb guy. He's fairly savvy politically, much like Joe Biden. He's been there for a long time. He knows how to play the game. Do you think this has
Yeah.
anything to do with foreshadowing what's coming? He knows that November is not going to go well for the Republicans. They aren't going to have the power in the Senate anyway, and that a lot of stuff is going to come down. And he'd just soon be as far away from that as possible when it does.
I think with Mitch McConnell, it's a lot of things as to a contributing factor as to why he's stepping down. I do think that could be one of it, but I don't think that's the primary reason. I think that he literally can't do the job anymore. I think um, the amount of behind the scenes like death threats and stuff that these people get, it weighs heavy on them. And I think that this could be something that's affecting his health mentally and physically. And I think that has a role to do with it as well. And like you said, he just want to get out of Dodge. But I do think he wants to try to save the Senate before he leaves. And I think in his eyes, the only way to do that is to make sure it doesn't go full blown MAGA before the election.
But
But I think it's a lot of reasons why he's bowing out.
the
I didn't.
problem,
Did you feel anything for him when when he teared up on the floor?
I,
I
I,
don't know
I,
why I asked you that question. I know you didn't.
I giggled like a schoolgirl is what I did. No, I don't feel any empathy for this clown. As far as I'm concerned, he could keel over on the Senate floor, and I would watch intently, just hoping that he would expire. But what's funny is the reason I say that about Mitch McConnell, about getting out while the getting's good, we're seeing a mass exodus of Republicans in the House, particularly saying, fuck it, I'm not coming back. Ken Buck and maybe 20 or 30 other people. That's a significant amount. That tells me they see something coming, and what they see coming doesn't look good for them.
Yeah, they see something coming and they're cowards.
Oh, yeah,
You know,
they're definitely cowards.
as much power as Mitch McConnell wielded, like he ran the Senate with an iron fist and in a very ruthless way.
Right.
But then, when it came time to hold Trump accountable, and in that moment, save the Republican Party, from what it's going through right now at this moment, he crumbled. He
Yeah.
cowered out, you know? He passed the puck. "Oh, we'll let the law deal with it. We'll let Democrats deal with it. They can clean up this mess." And he didn't want to stand up and be a leader in that moment, which was something that I didn't expect to see from him, but he showed his cowardice just like they all do. And I do think part of his running away and part of everyone else who's running away, it comes at the end of the day that they're cowards. They're not going to stand and fight for the Republican Party. They're not going to stand and try to bring them back to the middle or, make them palatable for the American people. They're just going to take their millions and they're just going to run away, and
Right.
they're just going to leave everyone else to clean up their mess. And I think that is more of an explanation as to why they're leaving, more so than they see what's coming ahead. I do think that they're running away. And it's not because they see something bad coming. I think that what they have to deal with in Congress with MAGA, and I mean, I I don't agree with the House going on vacation for 2 weeks, but I
No.
understand why they did. How could you be around Marjorie Taylor Greene and Lauren Boebert and all of these other clowns for any length of time and you don't need a break? So I don't agree with them leaving, but I understand why they did, and I think that's the same thing that's going on with this mass exodus that you're seeing, including Mitch McConnell. It's time for me to run away. I got my millions. I'm gonna be all right. Let me get up out of here. And I think that's what it is. They don't want to deal with the mess that they created.
Right. You were saying that MAGA will take over the Senate for the Republicans anyway. Do you really
Mhm.
see MAGA surviving after the 2024 election here in November? I mean, when they get wiped out, when there is a blue wave, the whole power
Mhm.
base for MAGA won't be there anymore. They do nothing but lose. The Republican Party will have to separate itself from MAGA because it's just a losing cause. They're a fucking anchor. We know that now, but it's going to take that beating in November for Republicans to accept it. I don't know that I see MAGA going too much farther than 2026, if they even make it that long, because they're just dead weight. They're not doing the Republican Party. If the Republican Party hopes to survive, they've got to separate themselves from MAGA.
Well, yeah, but I mean, MAGA is a bunch of toddlers. Have you
True.
ever tried to pick up a toddler in the middle of them throwing a tantrum? Yeah, you can pick them up, but they're kicking and screaming and hitting you and doing all this other kind of stuff. So I don't think that MAGA is going to go down without a fight. There's going to be a lot of kicking and screaming. I do see a blue wave that's coming, but the chaos that they're going to create as a minority party, it is going to be a sight to behold. I think it's going to be a lot of lashing out. And then I think once they are in the minority role, especially in the House, they will embrace that grievance policy that they run on. They're going to like really lean into that,
No.
because right now they're expected to be leaders and make decisions and do this and do that. They're so comfortable sitting back and complaining and obstructing things and not doing anything. And I think that that's what the Senate is going to turn into. They're just going to turn into obstructionists. They're going to turn into complaining. They're going to lean into grievance policies and all of this other crap that they do, culture war nonsense that they have going on. I think they're going to lean into that even more. Um, just to try to get their voices heard and try to, I don't know what the end goal there is, but I think it's going to be a battle between the traditional Republicans and the MAGA Republicans, and they're just going to be going at it. And I do think the people that's leaving, they're trying to avoid that mess that's
Well,
coming, because
well,
they're going to
with
have to go head to head with each other.
that division, though, can the party even survive? They can't win elections if they're divided like that. And if they aren't winning
Mhm.
elections, what's the point of having the party? They're going to have to regroup, reimagine, do something if they hope to compete in 2026 or 2028. That's their problem here. They're going to get beat soundly in 2024 from the
Mhm.
president down the ballot. And we know this because we already saw it in 2022. The abortion issue and all the other things going on, they're going to get beat again in 2024. I have to believe at that
Well,
point
yeah,
they go, what the fuck? We got to do something different.
that's true. But the one unique thing about MAGA is they're all in safe districts. They
Yeah.
can be extreme because they know that the district that they're in, they're not going to go anywhere.
Yeah.
They know that the chaos that they create, they're not going to be held accountable for that. The people in their districts, they have no appetite for anything other than MAGA. So they can be as wild and chaotic and as crazy as they want to. They are not going anywhere, and they know that. Versus the other Republicans who are in jeopardy in their districts, they can't be that extreme. They can't be that crazy. So when those people are gone, the only ones that's left is MAGA. And then just a few sane people who manage to keep their seats, they're going to have to go at it because it's going to be when a blue wave comes, those right now MAGA is the minority. But once the blue wave comes, just the same Republicans and the MAGA Republicans, they're pretty much going to be neck and neck at that point. And it's just going to be between them going at it to see if the party survives, and if it does, what direction are they going to go to?
Right.
I
Right.
really, I don't know. When it comes to that and Republicans, I just feel like that's a personal problem. They they have to figure that out on their own.
Well, you were talking about the 2 week vacation that Congress
Yeah.
took, and it was at an
Hmm.
inopportune time because we're knocking on the door of another government shutdown on March 1, which is Friday. And then another one, the other half of it on the 4th of March, which is, the next week. So we're back in the same situation we've been at, a few times before, and they always come up with a continuing resolution. They didn't take those 2 weeks to really figure anything out. They had 4 days to get something down and get something done when they've already proven they can't get anything done. But yesterday we heard about the leaders. Schumer and Mitch McConnell, Hakeem Jeffries, and Mike Johnson apparently got together and they agreed
Yeah.
to extend it a couple of weeks, another continuing resolution for a couple of weeks. But they're convinced if we get those couple of weeks, we can get this thing finally done. Let's be honest, doing a spending bill or a budget bill has never been a problem like this before. This is all about, like you said, the obstructionism of MAGA. But we're coming
Yeah.
up to the deadline, and they're going to push it out another 2 weeks. This is absolutely frustrating and a perfect illustration of how our Congress is dysfunctional and not doing the basics of what they are there to do.
Yeah. I mean, why would you worry about a budget when you need to question Hunter Biden?
Yeah.
Priorities, right? I think that, something about Mike Johnson, he's like, he just prays for everything and God just places everything in front of him. Doesn't really have to do anything. God handles it. I don't know who he was praying to over those 2 weeks, but he came back and God hadn't fixed it yet. So he might want to start doing some work. I do think that the only thing Mike Johnson learned over those 2 weeks is that he's a true believer and those other mm,
Go
try
ahead.
not to call them what I want to. Those other people, they are not. Because when he had the summit and he tried to sit down and pray with everybody and, encourage everybody in that way, they were kind of like, look, we're not here to hear you pray. We're not here for all that.
Right.
We're here to try to, get some speaking engagements and make some money on this vacation. That's what we're here to do. We don't care about any of this. So I do think that he tried to pull them together during the summit and come up with some kind of bill, some kind of compromise. I do think he tried to do that. But where he lost them was when he started off with the prayer. They were done at that point because they don't care.
No,
I just
no.
wanted to scream to the television, dude, they don't care about this. They don't care. They just say it. They don't care.
Right.
So he had an opportunity over the 2 weeks to get them together to bond or whatever it is that he was trying to do, to come with a bill and a budget. And I really do think he was trying. And I don't give him a lot of credit, but I do think he tried to take that 2 weeks, get outside of DC. Let's just get together as a group. Let's do these little bonding exercises and pray and kumbaya and go back to DC and handle business. That's not what MAGA is for. They don't want to handle business. They want to shut the government down. It's impossible to compromise with people who run on a platform of we will not compromise. If you compromise, you're a rhino. And I don't think he was expecting that. And so now it's kind of like a wake-up call. Well, what do I do now? And I do think his safest bet is to kick the can and to continue to kick the can. For him, I think that's his happy medium, is just kicking and kicking and kicking that can, because it doesn't matter what decision he makes, it's going to blow up in his face either way.
Yeah,
Hello, Mike Johnson. Oh, thing.
I have occasion to pray too and talk to God. And I said, "What's up with Mike Johnson?" And God said, "Fuck that guy, because he's an asshole." Um, I got a different God. He's a little more salty than some of the others. Anyway, um, when he talked about that 2 weeks to bond and all that stuff, it reminded me of all those
Yeah.
bullshit get-togethers you had when you worked for a big corporation. Oh, we're going to have a bonding day.
Mhm.
And all I could think of was, what I would have liked to have done? I would have liked to take Jim Jordan, put him on a box on a cement floor and say, "Jimmy, we're going to do a trust fall here. Go ahead. I'll catch you." And let him drop on his fat fucking head.
If Jim Jordan trusted you to catch him, he's dumber than I thought.
Yeah, I would have loved to. I think I could have persuaded him, though. I could have bribed him with something, and he would have done it.
I
Uh,
really do have Hunter Biden's laptop. Trust me, trust me.
I got it. A Russian guy gave it to me. Um, we're talking about Hunter Biden, and Hunter Biden was made to testify. And
Yeah,
for my money, I don't think Hunter Biden should have had to testify, given what we found out since before he was invited or subpoenaed. We find out that there's no evidence. There never has been any evidence. We find out their star witness is lying. And now we find out that witness was getting his information from Russian intelligence. It sounds like there's absolutely nothing here. It sounds like to me Jim Joder, James Comer, and Grassley, they're kind of complicit with Russian intelligence, and somehow they've infiltrated our Congress, which is troubling in its own right. For my money,
yeah.
if they continue taking this information and still trying to go after Joe Biden for it, that's knowingly using false information or disinformation to try to unseat a sitting president. That sounds a little treasonous to me, because they're giving comfort to the adversarial country in Russia and helping them to accomplish what they want to accomplish, which is chaos and disorder in our government. I don't know why they double down and triple down so much they can't let it go. It's like a dog with a fucking bone. Even though they know it's going to bring them down, they can't stop.
Literally, they can't stop because Donald Trump told them not to.
Right.
So that's why they're not stopping. I do think that Hunter Biden played this perfectly. Um,
I do too.
he he made them look so stupid. And he made their claims so obsolete that when he exposed them for not wanting to have the public hearing, they're just going to twist everything that I say. This is why they're doing that. I do think that narrative, that's the only narrative that people believe at this point. I don't even think MAGA believes them at this point.
Yeah.
So when he went into the hearing, nobody really cared. It wasn't really a big deal. Nobody was like, "Oh, nobody was like sitting on the edge of their seat waiting to hear what information they got out of him, because whatever they came out and said, nobody believed it. And that was thanks to Hunter Biden. When got up, he gave his statement. He showed up to testify in public. He told MAGA, he told everybody else, I want to tell you, and I want to tell you in public. Fox News, Newsmax, OAN, all of these people were telling them, publicize this, do the hearing in public. We want to hear it for ourselves. And when the Republican Party refused to do that, they gave their hand away. So right now, with them continuing this, it's just a fool's errand and everybody knows it. So it's completely been exposed. It's completely blown up out of water. At this point, they're doing what they do best, which is wasting our taxpayer dollars at this
Right.
point. And
Right.
everybody knows it. So what they're doing is just for nothing. And I think they're just doing it to keep themselves busy. And I would rather them keep chasing their tails and do some actual real damage or even more damage to the country than what's already going on. So I just say, hey, let them keep on going. But have you heard their new talking point about that?
I can't wait. Go ahead. No, I haven't.
It's not Joe Biden. It's not Hunter Biden. It's the Biden family. Look at
Oh,
the money that the family has gotten. I don't know. This might be something that they pick up on and they start talking about it tomorrow or in the next couple of days. But that's the new talking point from everything that I've been seeing, the interviews that's been given since they came out of that hearing. It's about the Biden family. So because the Biden family, whether it was the brother, Hunter, the granddaughter, whoever, if they use that Biden name to get any kind of job or anything, that's influence peddling because they're taking money from other places. So it's not even about Joe and Hunter at this point. It's about the Biden family. They are taking money. They are doing this. They are doing that. So now they've just taken it and this umbrella and they've just put it over everything. Everybody in the family, they're all in on it. And so that's what they're doing at this point. I think I have a feeling that it's going to be a bigger thing that people talk about maybe tomorrow or the next day after that, but that's their new narrative that they're running with. It's the family. It's not about Joe Biden or Hunter. I even heard one guy, I can't remember his name, but he said even if it's just like $1, they're using the name Biden to get influence. And so it's the whole family. That's basically what they're saying at this point. It's literally the Biden crime family. It's all of them.
you
So
know,
that's their new talking
you know
point.
what's ironic about that when they say the Biden crime family? Again, no evidence has ever been
Mhm.
shown of any type for the situation. The Trump
Yeah.
organization, run by the Trump family, has been convicted of 17 felony fraud charges. We
Mhm.
know that Jared Kushner got $2 billion to invest for the Saudi crown prince. Now, people could say, "Oh, that's legit,"
Yeah.
but then the Saudi crown prince gives a interview and says, "Yeah, here's the deal. If Donald Trump doesn't win the presidency, we're taking the $2 billion back." If that isn't influence peddling, I don't know what the fuck is. They're blind to the obvious things that Donald Trump and the Trump family is doing, and they're trying to pin it on Joe Biden. It's about the projection thing. Everything they accuse somebody of, they are guilty of. And Donald Trump is truly a crime family. I mean, Donald Trump is going on trial. Donald Trump and the family was sued for committing fraud and peddling influence. But the Republicans don't want to talk about that. That's what's so silly about this. I mean, it's out there in the open. It's there. It's like them telling you it's sunny when it's raining and having some dumb fucks actually believe it.
I mean, yeah, and then we're expected to act like Trump was never in the White House. We
Yeah.
didn't see he put his whole family up on game. Seriously. He had Ivanka in the White House making deals with China. He had Kushner over here in Saudi Arabia. He had Eric and the other one and the other daughter that the other kids. He had them all in the White House. They all had jobs and their wives and girlfriends and everybody had jobs and they was all in the White House doing all this other like it was a straight up money grab for these people when they were in there. And for them to sit there and say the Biden crime family is so ludicrous to me because I don't know if you knew this, but when Joe Biden left, the office of when he was vice president with Obama,
Yeah.
he was only worth like $30,000 or something like that.
Yeah. He didn't
People
have
were
a ton of
literally
money.
calling him poor. Yeah, people were calling him poor. He was worth $30,000. Why? His son passed away. He was bogged down by medical bills. He almost sold his house, except for Obama was like, "Hey, no, don't sell your house. Let me give you a loan, you can pay me back." And he paid Obama back, and he only had like 30 grand left after he did that. He didn't make money when he was in the Senate because he wasn't being bought. He
Right.
didn't make money until after he left the White House, and he was like doing speaking engagement, his tours, he wrote his books and his memoir and stuff, and that is what generated his money. And even now, by all standards, he's not like an uber wealthy type of man. He doesn't brag about his money like Trump does. He's not like this super wealthy man. That's just not who he is. And that's when they keep digging for money and money and money. There's nothing there. It's literally you're not getting water from a turnip when he was only worth 30,000 when he left. And you're trying to sit there and say he was taking bribes left, right, and center when he was VP. But if he was taking all these bribes as VP, how was he only worth $30,000?
Well, and
But the thing about that is that's a fact, and they don't really care about facts. So I guess I just have to let that argument go.
well, and that's the thing that Biden says is if I stole all this money, where is it? Now, I went to the internet. I
Mhm.
went to Google to see what Joe Biden's net worth is. Um, and his estimated worth right now is $10 million, which is a lot of money, but not really when you think of former presidents, Obama, Bush, all these motherfuckers are worth in the six digits. And he's worth
Yeah.
$10 million. That's not surprising. That's respectable for a president and certainly doesn't suggest anything untoward as far as grifting money. Now, the only person that'll be
And he
brokered,
didn't even get that until after he didn't get that until after he left.
right?
So what you can do is a compare and a contrast, right? So what did Trump go into the White House with, and what did he leave with? What did Joe Biden go into the White House with, and what did he leave with? There's a stark contrast there.
Yeah.
But that does require logic, reason, and fact. So I don't think that's a selling point to them. I do think they just have to see that Trump isn't the man that he claims he is, and they do have to see that for themselves. And I don't think we can make them see that either. I don't think our focus should be on converting people. I think there's only like what 40% of this country that votes. We need to focus on the other 60%, figure out why they are not voting, and motivate them to vote. I
Right.
think that's what we need to do because trying to change the mind of these people is just not going to happen. It's not going to happen at all.
Well, like you said, I think we need people to understand and actually witness the truth about Donald Trump. And I think we're coming to that point
Hmm.
with this disgorgement of all this money by the state of New York. That's going to expose Donald Trump to a new level. I think people give people legitimacy and credibility if they happen to be rich. Well, they must be smart. They're rich. Soon, Donald Trump will not be rich. He'll be struggling, and that's going to take away a lot of the credibility. And then, when we start getting in the criminal trial and the evidence starts coming out, there's going to be some things that people just can't explain. So the destruction of Donald Trump starts in March with the money and with the criminal trial. And then after that, it's going to be like kicking a dead horse because he'll already be done after those two things. But there are people, the base, that will never change their mind. They don't believe anything. One of the most disturbing things is I can talk to a Trumplafuck and tell them a fact that's pretty obvious and pretty well known to everybody. And they'll look at me and say, I never heard that. I'd have to look into that. And and I believe that they don't
Hmm.
know that because of where they get their information. Fox News, OAN, or whatever, they're not telling
Hmm.
them the facts. So um, they're undereducated about what's truly going on, and they buy into just the the headlines and such, and they believe it's true. So I don't know that we'll ever educate them. Like I tell people, all we really need to do is get the moderates, the independents, and the conservatives in the Republican Party to see the danger in Donald Trump. The base can go on and do whatever they want. There's not enough of them to affect or to win the election. The main thing is to win the election. And then once that's done, Donald Trump will be like a horse with a broken leg. All he needs to be done is put down permanently. And I'm hoping, and I'm really feeling that that's where we're headed. Donald Trump can't survive this whole mess. He just cannot.
He can't. And then I was kind of digging into something that I came across it by accident, but there is this growing within the, I don't know, religious zealot. I don't know if it's a community or pocket or sector or whatever, but they are looking at Trump as like the Antichrist, and that's starting to spread. I don't know why I be going down some of these rabbit holes, but I do. And if anybody doesn't believe me, there is literally a YouTube channel called Antichrist 45. And it's dedicated to like drawing parallels between the Antichrist, Trump, and the Bible. I listened to two of his videos that he did, and they were saying I think it was like a two-parter, and there was like 25 points in the Bible where it describes the Antichrist, and each one of those points is like explains Trump. Now
Right.
I'm not like I didn't even know like in the Bible they referred to the Antichrist, something about the Antichrist and gold. And you know how crazy Trump is about gold. But it's like literally, and these are people who take the Bible like literally, and they really do like straight up believe that Trump is the Antichrist. And we are living in our final days because so many Christians are worshiping the Antichrist. And the Antichrist is like standing between like them and God and whatever. But it seems like they have like a nice little community there. And I'm seeing kind of like other little pockets of people who believe that's like popping up all over the place.
Yeah.
So
Well, you
it's
know what?
kind of like fighting from within. And I do think that the more Trump is exposed, the more of that we're going to see. And even the hardcore Bible thumping people, there are some of these people out there who believe the opposite of the evangelicals and their interpretation of Trump, which a battle of the diehard Christians, I never thought I would see that be brought on by Trump, but I think that's something that's brewing underneath the surface as well. It's pretty interesting when you start digging into that sector of
You know,
um,
if if you-
belief systems.
if you wanted to persuade crazy religious zealots to your side of
Hmm.
thinking, and that would be the talking point to give, that Donald Trump is in fact
And it's
the
working.
Antichrist. It is probably working.
Hmm.
Now, I'm not a theologian. I've read up on some Antichrist things, and there's a lot of theories on it that it's not a
Hmm.
person, it's something, whatever it is. But there is a criteria for the Antichrist. Um, and Donald Trump nails a lot of them. If anybody is the Antichrist, it would have to be him. Now, there are some other parts of it where everybody in the world loves him and they believe him. That's clearly not true. There's also a part of it where he gets a serious wound to the head that no one would survive, but he does. Unfortunately, we haven't had the good fortune to that happen yet. But but that's a narrative that these crazy fucks would believe, that he is the Antichrist. Um,
Hmm.
uh, the idea that we're coming to end times. I need to tell you this so you feel better about this. I don't know how you feel about end times, you know, and I've read
I'm
the
not
Bible.
worried about it.
Okay. Well, you don't have to worry about it because I got this thing gamed. In the Bible, it says, no one will know when the end comes. It will be a total surprise to everybody, right? So, in
Hmm.
order to game this situation, every morning when I get up, I go, oh no, today is the end of the world. And then God goes, he knows. He knows. It's going to have to be tomorrow because he knows. That's not how it's supposed to work. So the fact the world is
Thank you for
still,
saving us.
I saved the world, and I'm going to continue doing that as long as I can. But I tell you what, if I ever get to the point where I can't think or talk or I die, you're on your own, man.
I'll just have to carry the torch and every morning.
Well, now
Oh
you
my
know
gosh,
this.
it's the end of the world.
Now two people know. What the fuck? Who's leaking this shit?
Yeah, I didn't I didn't think. I really didn't. I just kind of equated overly religious zealots and just thought that they were staunch into their belief into Trump. And I've heard some sermons from some pastors and some pretty disturbing things that they've said. Until I came across, and you know what, me digging into that probably led me to the whole Trump Antichrist um, underbelly that's going on right now.
Yeah.
But it's gaining like a following there. And I've been reading like in some of like the comment sections on, and these people they're serious, 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 serious. And they believe it. They really believe it. Like he's evil. He's the Antichrist. And I think there's like a 25-point bullet that they go by, which points to Trump being the Antichrist. Like side by side, it matches up. And they really do believe it. I just personally believe he's just rotten in the
Yeah.
inside.
Yeah.
Um, I really do. I don't think about it any deeper than that. You know, we all have free will to make our choices, and he makes bad ones. He doesn't do anything to enrich anyone else, improve the life of anyone else, just him. He's a very selfish, narcissistic, rotten human being. He just is. I don't compare him to the Antichrist. I don't compare him to Christ. I don't compare him to anybody else. I just look at Trump as just a horrible person
Well, and there's no
and a
it there.
very sad and lonely person and a
Yeah.
very insecure person as
No
well.
question.
And I think that that's where his evilness comes from.
And I don't think there's any intellect in it. You know, some people like to think he's a stable genius or he's got a strategy or he's playing 3D chess. It's not like that at all. It's all reactionary. It's all emotion. It's all immediate. There's no thought about the future. It's right now. What do I get? What do I have to do or say to get what I want right now? Even if it might hurt him down the road, he doesn't care. He needs that immediate gratification. And that's a very simple mind, a very disturbed mind, and a mind like that can't go on
Mhm.
forever. Eventually it crashes. And we're seeing the early stages of it crashing. I mean, not only that, with all the pressures he has on, and when we see him on stage, he's clearly having trouble with his uh, mental acuity. He's having trouble speaking. He's
Right.
slurring. He's going off on tangents, even more so than he always did. This is what I know you think he's going to be the nominee. And honestly, if he was the nominee, I think that would be the greatest thing because nobody can
Yeah.
beat Trump like Trump. As long as this election is about Trump, it's a no brainer. It's an easy win. I'm just thinking taking his money, put him on trial, a criminal trial, having money problems, having to run for president, having all this shit going on, it's going to eventually crush him, at least emotionally.
Uh, yeah, I think he's already crushed emotionally.
Well, yeah, true.
But I do think that, you know, there's no primary for the Republican Party without Trump.
Yeah,
And I think that's the reason that he'll be the nominee. I do feel that there's no general with him. So I think that they put themselves in like between a rock and a hard place is where they're at. You know, there's no way to go with this. And I do think there are people within the Republican Party who knows that, and they just want people to show up to vote for the other people on the ticket. Forget Trump, we've given up on that.
right,
And then I can tell that by um the RNC resolutions that's been made lately to protect the little money that they have from Trump. And
right.
I do think that right now those resolutions are being put into place because they really do feel that Laura, I don't want to mispronounce her name, Trump is going to get in there. And when she's in there, they already know what her agenda is from day one. And they're already trying to protect themselves from that. Now, are they going to stand up and say that forcefully in public? Of course not. They're cowards.
Right.
But they are trying to protect themselves from that because they know that's what's coming. I really do think that they see that there's no way that they get through this primary without Trump, and they're trying to protect themselves from him.
Well, and this is kind of a lame effort for Donald Trump. If he wants to siphon money off from the RNC, they only got $8
Mhm.
million. The DNC has 117 million, RNC has $8 million. It ain't going to take long to drain that motherfucker, especially during an
The, you know,
election year.
what's crazy about that? What's the guy's name? Smirnoff.
Yeah,
Part of the reason that he got rearrested is because he lied about his cash on hand, what he had.
right.
He had like 6 million cash on hand,
He has more than the
and
RNC.
his female associate had like 4 million cash on hand. So they have
Wow.
more money than the RNC. Um, which is so sad.
It's pitiful. When you think
I,
about having $8 million going into an election year, that's crazy. They can't do anything. I mean, that's not enough to even amount a presidential campaign, let alone helping the down ballot folks or the people in the states. They're of no use to anybody because the Republicans in each state are going fucking broke too. The Republicans have a cash crisis, and that's kind of important going into an election year.
well, when you elect grifters, liars, people with no experience, ignorant people, people who only cater to Trump, who don't have the interest of the party as a whole, best interests as a priority, this is what happens.
Yeah,
Um, I think that the RNC is the death knell for the Republican Party. And the reason is because they are there to support the down ballot races. They're not there to prop up the presidential nominee or pay legal fees.
right,
They're there to make sure that they have seats filled in the House, in the Senate, in local elections as well. So without them having access to those resources, it makes it so hard. Like the only people that they're going to be able to put on a ticket at this point is people who can self-fund themselves.
right.
And how many people can do that? So I really do think that everything within the Republican Party that Trump touches, it just shatters. It
Yeah.
just completely shatters.
Or
It takes a lifetime. Like I don't, I should not care, but when you just think about it, just seriously just think about it. It takes a lifetime to build up a major political party,
right.
to have the influence, to have the capital, to have what they've accomplished, is horrible as their goals are. I mean, just look at the work and the effort that they put in to get there. And they allow one person to come through and just completely tear that down. The same thing with Mitch McConnell. His whole legacy is being overshadowed by the fact that he allowed Donald Trump to get the best of him and completely take that Republican Party and run away with it when he had a chance to stop it and he did not. That is his legacy. After all of the ruthlessness, all of the judges, all of the cheating, everything that he did, for him to end up with this being his legacy couldn't have happened to a nicer guy.
No, he's absolutely a failure.
But it is
And
sad when you think about it.
history will not be kind to him. We're going to wrap things up, but I have one story. I wanted to have one happy story, one funny story as we uh,
Let's go.
leave the program. Okay. Well, you know, the funny gal we both love is Lauren Boebert. Now, I'm joyous about her demise, really. I mean, here's a dumb bitch that needs to go away really quick, and it looks like that's happening. I mean, she decides she's going to run for reelection and realizes her district won't elect her. She moves to another district, and they hate her even more than the first district. She goes to a theater and gropes her partner there on video. No matter what she does, she
But
fails.
that's what she gets for dating a Democrat. Remember that.
Yeah, no shit, no shit. But here's the deal. The other day, the bottom fell out. Well, she went through a divorce too, and that was so hard for her. And there was a lot of violence and problems going on with that. But a couple of days ago, her son, Tyler, an 18-year-old boy, was charged with 22 criminal charges of theft of property and vehicles. She attended the hearing via Zoom, and this woman, for all the shit she's created and all the shit she's poured out of her, she's going through a living hell right now. And call me an asshole
Yeah.
for doing it, but it makes me fucking smile, because if anybody deserves to go down and go down hard, and no pun intended, but but she needs to fucking go down.
Her son got more charges than Hunter Biden.
Yeah,
Sorry, I had to just throw that in there. She thinks
yeah,
Hunter Biden is a criminal mastermind. Um, but I do, I felt like when that happened, in my mind, I didn't see her stepping up and being a mother in that moment and asking him, you don't have to break into cars. So why are you doing this? Just like I don't think when her son got his girlfriend pregnant that she sat down and had a conversation with them like most parents would do. I don't think that happened. I think in this instance, especially I remember that phone call that he made when his father attacked him or whatever that DV situation was. And her only concern was, I'm a congressperson. You don't have to come here. Having her son call back and say, he's fine. Nothing happened. It's all good. In my mind, when that happened with her son, instead of asking him what's going on, trying to address his issues as to why he's making these choices, I really do think she laid into him, asking him, like, how do you think this is going to make me look?
right,
The
right.
timing is bad. I got an election coming up or whatever. And so in my mind, that's how that went with him. And in that instance, I felt bad for him because I feel like him doing this petty bull crap that he's doing is for attention, and he's crying out for help and he wants some. And he doesn't have parents with the maturity to guide him and help him into making the right choices. I feel bad for him in that instance, but we can help him if we can stop distracting his mother with all these committee assignments and these being in the House of Representatives. She don't need those distractions. She needs to focus on her family. So what we can do is we can rid her of that seat and put her back in her son's life so she can focus on her family. And I think we should help her do that. We should
I
help her
think
son with that. He
I
needs his
don't.
mother back.
I think
That's what we
she's.
should do.
I think she's going to handle that very easily, because she's not going to get reelected. But it's easy to figure out how this happens. She's in D.C. doing TV shows, getting involved in insurrection. The kid's at home staying with dad, who has problems with violence, and also exposing himself to underage women. So that's not the best kind of environment for an 18-year-old kid. I'm sorry. He doesn't have a real good role model at this point. So, Old Soul, we're going to wrap things
He
up for
never
the.
did. I know that with her previous employees, they would say that they wouldn't get their paychecks, but she would buy stuff for her husband and all this other stuff. So the poor kid, I don't think he's had a good example at all. And I
No.
can't blame it on her for being a teen mother because she's out here trying to give parenting advice. Get the heck out of here.
And you were a teen
I,
mother,
I
and
can't
you
I
were a
can't deal
teen.
with this woman.
You were a teen mother, and your daughter turned out pretty well. So it can be done. But you got to make an effort. You got to make the kid the priority, and you got to be a
Yeah,
decent person. She's none of those things. So that's that's why she ended up the way she is.
exactly.
We're gonna wrap up the Rational Boomer podcast. Old Soul, thanks for coming on and spending time. It's always great to get some clarity and some insights from you. Like I say, it makes me seem a lot smarter. So thank you for that.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I should say thank you more often. You're always thanking me. Thanks for the platform and, allowing me to talk about the women who stay here. I appreciate it.
Well,
And they appreciate it as well.
and I think it's important that we do, and I think it's hitting home with a lot of folks. Those of you listening, I want to thank you for taking the time to listen. I hope you have a great day, and we of course will talk to you again tomorrow.